Buffalo Soldiers is the name given to a group of African American soldiers who were spread across the U.S. after the Civil War and continued to serve until after World War II. The name was created by Native Americans, who gave them that name as a sign of respect. Also, they believed that their short, black, curly hairs somewhat resembled a buffalo. Their story has amazed all who hear it because of the soldiers' bravery and courage, as well as commitment to protecting their country despite all of the harassment and racism they had to endure. Although the enlisted soldiers were black, most of the commissioned officers were white. The idea of the Buffalo Soldiers was started in the West when a platoon containing only 2 African American soldiers was ambushed while transporting cargo. The other soldiers just basically fell apart and didn't know what to do, but the 2 African American soldiers saved it. One stayed there and held them off, while the other went back to base to warn the superiors. The generals and other superiors realized that the African Americans made great soldiers and created 4 military regiments consisting only of African American soldiers. These regiments were the 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments and the 24th and 25th Infantry Regiments. They patrolled western colonies and settlements and protected against Native American attackers. However, they were also assigned to protect prisoners and capture outlaws. Buffalo Soldiers won 13 Medals of Honor in between around 1870 and the mid-1890s. They even fought with the Rough Riders in the charge up Kettle Hill in the Battle of San Juan Hill after they rescued them at the Battle of Las Guasimas in Cuba. Benjamin Oliver Davis was the highest-ranking African-American officer in the Army during his time in the military. He was born in 1880 in Washington, D.C. In 1897, he enrolled in Howard University. In 1898, during the Spanish-American War, he joined a volunteer regiment in the Army. He then enlisted as a private in the regular Army in 1899. He earned a series of promotions relatively quickly. Davis took on several military roles. He was an officer in the Philippines in the early 1900s, and he actually did serve with the famous 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments, which were some of the Buffalo Soldiers. He later became a professor at Wilberforce University in Ohio. He was a professor in military tactics and science. He also taught at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. In 1920, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel, and in 1930, he was promoted to colonel. The following year, he became a full brigadier general. His main objective in joining the Army was to ease racial tension, and he succeeded. Henry Ossian Flipper was the first ever African American to graduate from the military academy at West Point. Later in his career, he ended up becoming a second lieutenant in the 10th Cavalry Regiment, one of the regiments that were considered the Buffalo Soldiers. Unfortunately, his promising military career ended in 1881 by a dishonorable discharge, which later was said to be racially motivated and unjust. Flipper was born a slave in 1856 in Thomasville, Georgia. He later went to missionary school and also studied at Atlanta University. He was the 6th African American to attend West Point, yet the first to graduate. All of the others left because of racial harassment. After graduation, he became the first black commissioned officer in the regular Army. He was then transferred to Fort Davis, Texas. He was convicted for conduct unbecoming of an officer. Long after his death, however, historians discovered that his white counterparts plotted against him. After his military career, Flipper went on to become a surveyor and mining engineer, a newspaper editor, author, and even went on to become an assistant to the U.S. Secretary of Interior. He clearly was an inspiration for future soldiers and commanded a regiment of the Buffalo Soldiers. The tale of the Buffalo Soldiers is a very inspiring one, full of courage and confidence, and the fact that a lot of these soldiers fought through all the racism and harassment is just astounding.